All right, could be a quieter day with the July 4th holiday, but there's been nothing quiet from the tech sector this year, whether it's the excitement around AI or quantum computing plays. Our next guest is a longtime investor in the technology sector, so we're delighted to have Eric Jackson back with us. He is founder and president of EMJ Capital. Eric, it's great to see you. I do love these quieter days because it gives us a chance to stop and reflect. We were just having a broader conversation around where the markets are, which are at all-time highs. But what did you make of the rapid return of the tech enthusiasm on Wall Street over the last couple of months?
Well, it's great to be with you, John. Tech is always the siren song for investors because that's where the growth is. It's like where do you go to rob banks? You go to the bank. And I think there has been an acceleration in the last 6 months. You're right. Names like we've talked about quantum names. They have really exploded since the U.S. election. There's a stock you and I have talked about listed in Canada, BTQ. I first started banging the drum on it. I remember it well in early December. It was 30 cents. It was like this low cap kind of nobody was paying attention to it type stock, but it was in the quantum space. They were doing post-quantum cryptography. Yesterday, it was over $9, in whatever, 7 months. That's like I don't know what that is, 25 bagger, 30 bagger or something. Like those are like venture type returns in stocks, which is stuff you dream about. Some people are going to say, hey, that's unsustainable. On the other hand, a lot of these areas, especially like quantum, part of the reason they've grown so much is that they were devastated so much coming out of 2020 and 2021 when people just sort of said, hey, I've had it with growth stocks. I'm going to toss all of these in the trash bin. And all these sort of quantum SPACs, went down to like 50 cents or wherever they were trading.
Well, let's, since you've given us some great perspective there on quantum, let's stay with it for a second. And that stock you're mentioning is BTQ, is the Canadian symbol for it. That SPAC phenomenon. So you've said before that in tech, when new ideas, new trends reflected through companies that might be leading that trend become available as investment options for people, usually because the private markets have been so robust for years that you didn't necessarily get to be part of these earlier stage companies for a long time. But now, because of that SPAC phenomenon a couple of years ago, it almost kind of invited this opportunity that arguably we hadn't seen since the dot-com days. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's right. I haven't made that connection, John, but I think you're absolutely right. I've been lucky enough to find some real kind of multi-year compound growers, 10 baggers, 25 baggers. The thing that they have in common is that they were kind of left for dead in the trash heap. I started banging the drum for Carvana in 2023. I think I first took a position when it was like $15. I think it went from 400 to 3. I got in at 15. It's now in the somewhere between 300 and 400. People thought it was going bankrupt when it was $3. DeFi Technologies is another company I liked. It similarly got thrown out after 2021. We talked about BTQ being in that camp as well. There were a lot of these SPACs that had good ideas, whether it was quantum. There were QuantumScape is not a quantum company. It's an EV battery company that SPACed and went up to over $100 in the heyday, and then down to wherever it bottomed. But it had an explosion a couple of days ago because they showed that they had some breakthrough in EV battery technology. So there is an opportunity. You're right. In some of these names, you got to be careful because you could tie up your capital for years with nothing happening if you pick the wrong company. But if you get it right and you get these kind of names kind of making a move, and I think we'll talk about a couple a little bit later, where I think we're still early days, you can really do well and see these sort of multi-year, multi-bagger type of situations.
Okay, and as you've said many times before, because this is early stage, profits are hard to come by, especially with quantum, so folks should be aware of that. But if you were going to, let's lead into what you were just saying there. What else would you be thinking about going forward? Other opportunities out there.
Well, when I was banging the drum for Carvana, I felt a little sheepish, going on TV, and saying, "Hey, this is the next big thing. It's $11, it's $15 now. It was just $3 a few months ago. But get in now because the next stop is $400." I mean, I didn't want to sound like a lunatic running down Bay Street. But obviously, I've had some luck, finding some of these other names. And I've got a couple now where, I don't care. I'm going to scream it from the rooftops, John. And people can, pay attention or not, just totally disregard me. But I do think I've got a couple of names that are potential, 5-year, 100-bagger type of companies. So the two names are Iron and Cipher Mining. And both of these stocks, they do fall into that category of kind of being tossed aside. They came public, in 2021, 22 type time period, sort of at the tail end of that last growth phase. They were thought of as Bitcoin miners. I mean, they are Bitcoin miners. They do Bitcoin mining. That whole sector has kind of been, has sat out the crypto rally over the last couple of years because people think, these guys aren't going to make enough money from doing that business. But secretly, both of these names, Iron and Cipher, have been investing in AI and HPC because, being a Bitcoin miner, they know a thing or two about building out data centers, getting power on the cheap, getting the right land, located next to the power to allow you to kind of build out these sort of data centers to do Bitcoin mining. And it turns out you need those same skill sets to be in the AI data center business. And even though everybody is, gaga over AI, and we all agree that, the demand is insatiable and I could never give up my premium ChatGPT, subscription and all this. And, the electricity demands are going to be through the roof over the next 5 years. And Nvidia is at all-time highs, and the hyperscalers are, and the Mag 7 are at all-time highs. There's this one little corner of the market, I think, that hasn't been fully appreciated. And it's sort of epitomized by these two names, Iron and Cipher, because they are the ones who actually go out, buy the land, get the power connects, plan this sort of years in advance. It takes years. Even, Microsoft and Amazon can say they're going to spend billions in CapEx building data centers, but that is years away. And these two companies are sitting on, developed infrastructure and land and power connects, where each of them is going to be delivering 3 gigawatts of power each by the end of 2026. And so they're in the catbird seat with respect to these other hyperscalers and names like CoreWeave, who need those power connections, need those data center facilities to rent them to meet the demand of the open AIs of the world. So you have this sort of little kind of unknown, sort of misunderstood, oh, these are just Bitcoin miners, I don't care about them, players off to the side here. And I think over the last few weeks, since I've been banging the drum, coincidentally, there has been this re-rating going on with them. Both have had great runs over the last few weeks, but I still think we are just getting started because, there are potential deals to be done with the oracles of the world who have made their own deals with OpenAI and Project Stargate, where everybody's going to be kind of looking for the pieces on the chessboard of how do I buy these, how do I do these partnerships with these companies that actually have the data center facilities, the power connects to actually deliver on the demand that I need to meet in order to meet these sort of contract obligations. So I think both are sitting very pretty.
Okay, and I'm just going to recap everything that we talked about there, just with the symbols referencing those companies so our audience is familiar. So we were talking about IREN and CIFR, and then you made that reference to CoreWeave, which obviously, in going public got a lot of attention. That's CRWV. And then just for those who are just wondering about, names like Nvidia, and it's like near a $4 trillion market cap, and whether or not, if there is a bit of a rollover in the market, are those big AI companies at risk to losing momentum? What would you say from all your experience in investing in tech over the years?
Certainly, the hopes and dreams of many are kind of pinned on the likes of an Nvidia and basically all the Mag 7 names. And so, if any of them show a pullback in spending, cooling of demand, that's going to have ramifications not just for those stocks but for the entire market because they compose such a big piece of the overall markets. I would say, though, that a name like Nvidia, it's basically traded flat for about a year. From last June until just maybe a couple of weeks ago, it had finally kind of broke out just in the last, I think, 10 days to kind of all-time highs. It's at like 159 now and stuff. And so the thing with Nvidia is that if you look at the historical comps on sort of like a forward, enterprise value to EBITDA metric, you'd say, hey, this is cheap relative to the range where it's traded at for Nvidia over its sort of life cycle. There's been sort of ups and downs, euphoria and kind of despair, and it's sort of traded not just at the mean, but sort of below the mean, towards the despair level. And I think it was just skepticism, pent up skepticism that, this company, which is so big already, delivering billions, 40, $50 billion of revenue a quarter, could you really keep that up and in fact grow it, at an accelerated pace to kind of justify an increase in the stock price? And I just think that we're seeing, no pullback in kind of interest in AI. So I'm still bullish, kind of longer term about Nvidia and the market in general.
Right.